Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Henchman's Memoirs. This is our campaign diary of our 5e Dark Souls of Drakkenheim campaign. When we last left off, the party was working their way up the Cosmological Clocktower, which is infested with a terrible case of harpies, and the party was determined to clear it out and turn it into their base. I won't narrate the entire end of that fight downstairs against the lesser harpies. Suffice to say that the party finished them all off, except for the sort of lieutenant here that was a maximum hit point harpy who managed to escape. The party has plugged their ears with so much beeswax that I gave them advantage on their saving throws against harpy songs, but I forgot that was the ruling I had made, and so during this session I basically just made them immune to harpy's song and sonic attacks because their ears were plugged, which I didn't have to do. That's not exactly what the 5e rules say, that you're immune to sound-based effects. It just says you can't hear. Anyway, so the party finished off the harpies, except, as I say, the lieutenant flew away, obviously to go get the Crimson Countess, the main boss of this area. So the party went up a couple levels. They found the level where all the bells of the tower are now hanging silent. They went up a couple more levels, and they found the main sort of mechanical level of the tower, where 111 years ago it stopped mysteriously, and but all the mechanisms are still there. There's even these little records in paper sort of sheaths that can play different songs on the bells, and the players found those and they're like, oh, we're gonna have to get this thing working so we can play our anthem, all that stuff. But they decided I was like, do you guys keep going up? They're like, well, are we supposed to? I'm like, well, why are you here? They're like, to claim this place as our own. I'm like, okay. And, they're like, the part at the top that's out of the haze. I'm like, exactly. Well, you're not there yet. So they keep coming upstairs, and I kind of dropped some hints on them that they were getting ready to face this climactic battle of this scene. So I think Thaddeus dropped some healing, and they made sure everybody had a healing potion in their belt pouch, and they all are telling me all the time they have great big arrows pointing to where their healing potion is, so if they go down, a friend can run up and pour the healing potion in their mouth, and they definitely needed it in this fight. So they get up here. There's this kind of stairwell that's one of the towers. There's kind of 4 towers on the 4 corners of the clock tower. They're coming up out of that, and they come into the sort of main nest of the Crimson Countess herself, which I just laid some of this stuff out to represent sort of the nests and piles of stuff that is everywhere, sticks and banners and all kinds of crazy stuff that she's made her filthy, flea-ridden nest out of. And no sooner do they get up here and kind of get their bearings, and Thaddeus still had this sort of leopard jaguar bobcat thing that he had summoned. It stays around for an hour, so that thing was still with him. It still had plenty of hit points, and they got up here, and so here there are 4 large archways at each of the cardinal directions that kind of look out, but then the corners are kind of closed in and supporting. There's these stairs that go up to kind of the attic that's up above here. That is the very, very highest level of the tower, but they're pretty far up here, and they're looking out over the city, and they're looking out over the haze, and they hear this screech of rage and sorrow, and coming towards them, they see the Crimson Countess herself. She's this badass harpy boss chick, and they notice right away that her spear is crackling with electricity and so forth as she comes flying towards them. So the party had a chance to kind of get ready for her, and the frontline fighters kind of got over here and got ready to engage her. As she came flying in, she was a little too high for Peter to reach, Pietor, but her lieutenant was fair game. So he started up a fight with her, and she starts trying to take out our resident artificer, Atticus Rex. So the party starts throwing some things her way. She does have this Screech of Rage ability that recharges on a 5 or 6. Very important detail you'll see as the story goes on. Recharges on a 5 or 6. So she unleashes that, and I think she wasn't, because of the way people were placed, she was only able to get one or the other of them, and I think Atticus saved. And then I suppose it would have been Nexel who hit her with a Dissonant Whispers, and she doesn't have legendary resistance or anything like that. So when she failed the save, she has to fly, use her reaction to fly 60 feet away. So I had her fly way off the map, way out here, and the party is immediately beginning to see how big of a problem it is that they do not have good ranged attacks between any of them. Nexel is really the only one. Nexel, the sorcerer, is really the only one who has any decent ranged capacity, and he only gets so many spell slots. The rest of them, need somebody to be within about 30 feet. So Pietor managed to finish off the lieutenant harpy, and the party was bracing themselves for what was going to come next. And so the Crimson Countess, I think she flew in one more time and unleashed some damage over here, and I think this was the first time that Pietor went down. So the party has started calling him Dirt Nap Pete. It's hard to say that because there's a P at the end of Dirt Nap and at the beginning of Pete, but Dirt Nap Pete, because he keeps going down to 0. And the party, they had every inclination that they were fighting flying foes. I don't know what they expected me to do. They've got to make preparations for the fight that they see coming. And if nobody has a decent ranged attack, this is the time before you go into the city to say, hey, what are we going to do to kind of bone up our ranged attacks? Maybe we need to buy some rifles from those dwarves or something like that. But they didn't. So she comes in, she drops Dirt Nap Pete on the ground, and I think she gets into a little fight here with Atticus, and Atticus manages to drive her off again. She decided she didn't like the odds here as the party starts closing in on her, and of course the cat comes running over. So she flies off and actually starts circling all the way around to here, right? But she goes 60 feet and goes way out around. She has this, she kind of has like what rogues have, where she can use the dash, disengage, or some other action as a bonus action every round. So I'm like, okay, well she's gonna move, dash, and dash to get around to here. So they get Dirt Nap Pete up, and they start coming over this way to kind of fight her over here. And she gets in here, and she's hovering, and the party's trying to fight her. He's trying to lightning whip her. Well, you'll never guess what. She's immune to lightning. She's got this lightning spear. She's immune to lightning. And I think she dropped Pete down again with another hit. He was really trying to sort of taunt her as he was in here, yelling at her and stuff. I generally let taunts have a chance of working. I let you make a charisma roll, sort of maybe a persuasion roll, especially if sort of the situation calls for it. So she considers all of the harpies to be like her daughters, right? And seeing them all get killed, and of course it was Dirt Nap Pete that killed her lieutenant, her favorite daughter. So his taunts got her to come in again for another close encounter. I think she put him down for the second time, and she was kind of wrecking house on these guys. I managed to roll another recharge for her ability, and knocked some people back, and did a bunch more damage. And then Nexel gets off another. No, this wasn't. She decided to back out at this point, and she gives this horrifying screech. And when she does, I just rolled a 4-sider, and it came up a 2. Now, what I was doing here is a little something I've got from the Runehammer YouTube channel. A guy over there named Hanker Infernale has been doing YouTube videos forever, and one of his ideas that he incorporated into his index card RPG is the idea of a suspense dice or a timer. And so when there's something that's coming up that's going to change the fight, I'll roll this dice in the open. I won't necessarily tell the players what's going to happen when it runs out, but this is how many rounds until something dramatic happens. Sometimes they know what it's going to be. Sometimes, you're in a burning tower, or you're on a burning bridge that's about to collapse, and okay, this is how many rounds you have before the bridge completely collapses. But sometimes you just roll it and you don't tell them what it is. So that's what I did here. They run over and they get Pete back on his feet, and I think Thaddeus had maybe thrown a couple magic stones out at her or whatever, but she was basically holding on, trying to get her sonic screech to recharge, and the party was kind of trying to regroup. Nexel might have hit her with a magic missile, or that might have been Atticus hit her with his version of a magic missile, and it wasn't too long. Peter's player kind of guessed that this was a timer. I don't know if I've used this technique on this party before, but he kind of guessed this was a counter that was triggered by her screaming. And so he says he's looking out all around 360, trying to see anything that he can see. So he sees these two shapes in the distance, and he can't quite make out what they are. Maybe they're dragons, or maybe they're Pegasi or something like that. He can't really make them out, but through the haze, he sees these two creatures approaching. And now the party is like, oh boy, this sucks. So, I believe, let's see who was down. I think Atticus got put down by one of my attacks, and the party did this thing. I don't know if your players do this, but where they're trying to decide, should we stay and fight, or should we try to run? Thaddeus was convinced that this stairwell would make a better choke point, because this is all enclosed, right? They could get down in here, and it would be harder for her to be doing this flyby nonsense that was definitely not good for the party. So Thaddeus decides to change into a bear, and I think he grabbed Atticus and started pulling him this way. And the monk, Pietor, gets up here. Her ability recharges. She comes in again, and she unleashes her Thunderstrike thing. He falls down. All right. Nexel, I think, gives Atticus the potion to heal him up, and Thaddeus turns back into a gnome. Okay, so this was more or less the situation at the pivotal moment of the battle. The Manticores weren't that far off. They were within tail spike range, and they were already shooting tail spikes at Nexel, and he's and a few of them came his way, but I don't think he got hit. Maybe he got hit for a few hit points of damage. And here's the critical moment for the party. Are they going to fight, or are they going to flee? And Thaddeus thought, okay, we need to withdraw and get her into a less advantageous situation. So he casts Fog Cloud over this whole area. And the other players, the players for these two guys, the two fighter types, were just rolling their eyes, and they were just so frustrated with him because they felt like it was tactically a really bad thing to do. But he went ahead and did it. Then Pietor jumps up, and they're on the ground, laying side by side, looking at each other. And Pietor's like, "Did we win yet? No, I don't think we've won yet." So Pietor's like, "To heck with it." He jumps up, jumps into the fog, swinging and kicking and trying to get at her. He has disadvantage. Atticus jumps up, comes in here, swinging his maul and everything else, hits her, I think, and this is when he finds out not only is she immune to lightning damage, she's also immune to thunder damage. At one point, before the fog was laid out, Nexel used color spray on her. And we had to read the spell 4 different times the way it was worded to be, okay, no. If she has more hit points than the amount he rolled, even if she's the only one in the cone, she's not affected. So it's like, well, whoever has the lowest hit points is affected first, and then this. We were like, well, then she would be affected. No. She was not affected by that. Nexel was back up here against the wall. But now that the fog cloud was in place, the manticores were going to have to come in and land. They couldn't pelt them with spikes and stuff from a distance, right? So the cat comes running in and tries to attack. Everybody's at disadvantage. And then Nexel uses his last dissonant whispers. Okay? This was clutch. This was it. So, reviewing the rules, I had not given them attacks of opportunity on the previous dissonant whispers because I thought it was the forced movement thing. But apparently, that doesn't count as forced movement. If you use your own reaction to move, that's not forced movement. So, attacks of opportunity do apply. So now she had her chance to get away. Or, well, she had to move away. But she was low on hit points. She had stayed in this fight way longer than she wanted to. She knew she was in trouble. I rolled to see if her ability recharged. It did not. And then Nexel gets this ability off on her, and she has to flee. Pietor, I think Atticus just tried to like punch her with his shield now that he knows she's immune to lightning and thunder. He hits her and does like 1 point of damage. And then Pietor managed, even at disadvantage, spending every key point left in his body. I think he hit her for some damage, and she was down to just like 3 hit points or something ludicrous. And the cat, Fluffy, gets an attack of opportunity against her as she tries to move away. Fluffy hits with the attack of opportunity. He kills her on bonuses. She goes down. The 2 manticores are going to fly away. It was the end of the session. It was, let's face it, it was pretty epic. It was pretty memorable way for them to finish off this boss. And now they have control of the Cosmological Clocktower. So join us back next week if you want to hear what happens next as they finish exploring the clock tower, and then they level up to level 5 at this point, and we'll find out what happens next. Give us a subscribe or hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything in the Dark Souls of Drakkenheim.